Call this the January 28th door crisis incident here. I'd like to talk about two things about my dad and his complexity. It just doesn't feel right to be keeping this without talking about it. So, my parents have constantly been complex, and yesterday was another example of it. So, for the first example, on Sunday, a few days before, he drove me and I got something. But as we were driving back home, he tried to show me a group of girls, old women, and he asked me about who's the most cutest. Because my dad speaks from superficial metrics, I don't judge people by looks. So, I countered him by trying to distract him with the men in the other picture. But my dad would not budge. I told him explicitly that I do not judge people by looks and that they all come from a similar lineage anyway. Both are neither more or less cute than the other. It depends on their own individual personalities. He cornered me further and said, quote unquote, only the women here. Who looks the cutest, quote unquote. And I countered saying the metric is superficial. I judge by what personality is and who they really are. And my dad said, if you had to choose between these girls, who would it be? He's trying to pull me into binaries. Again, I don't pull by binaries and beauty is subjective. I'm not gonna come to a conclusion until I know who they really are. And it's a collision of tactics because his definition of cute is that who looks most cute on paper and picture. My definition of cute is that whose most personality is human and unique. Which one is real and has vibrancy of their own. And both of our definitions keep colliding. I keep saying it before in my old videos. That is hierarchy based. I am modern based. Right now it may seem like an innocent question, but it's so toxic because he's superposing his view to my view without actual respect of the people. He's judging by appearance and he's trying to coerce me to make a decision without judgment in his worldview. He's trying to superimpose it. And I call it out because it's reductionist. Like a neutron star, I tightly compress this meaning and make true meaning out of it. Personality would always go over looks, obviously. And I know a lot of people might even call me too nonsensical right now, but let's put this in example. If you are one of those people in that picture, would you want to be judged by my dad in that way, seeing who's the cutest, or be judged by the metrics of how you want to be judged? The biggest issue going on is that my dad doubled down and said, it's okay to like girls. I said, I don't judge by these metrics. He's trying to reframe the conversation as if it's something that's normal. He's deflecting because he doesn't want to confront his own thinking about it. He's saying in my mind that I'm apparently overcomplicating it and that I should just pick someone who's cute because everyone else does it. It's toxic because it discourages nuanced, basic personality thinking. He's using an old, hierarchical, superficial, base thinking method. Could girls, on the other hand, do this my age? Could other people do this my age also? Sure, but they mean it as a joke. Of course, when they themselves date boys and girls, will look for personality, not double down like my father is doing right now, because they weren't conditioned like my father was. His is ingrained behavior, like he actually follows stuff like this. And ironically, if my dad watched this right now, he would call all of this nonsense because he knows his worldview doesn't accept things that challenge his authority or follow his ingrained logic. This so proves my point. I don't win the argument necessarily, but it shows what's already there. I argue and talk about this because what I've said in Enlightenment, even about the Indian Revolution, and even about Rousseau, Locke, and Kant, they all would want me to say this right now because I'm exercising my right to express my view without violence, because my father is superimposing his over mine to exercise reason against unexamined and ingrained authority such as my dad and challenge inherited metrics. It's a model to self-improvement for the future. I'm also following a modified version of Gandhi's form of civil disobedience. I call it moral disobedience in a principled manner. I refuse to follow my father's moral base authority when it objectively does not make sense, such as the girl issue. Hold ground without causing harm or submitting to my dad's hierarchy either, while I also assert my values and challenge his authority for change. What makes it a decision is that it's in something in calculated principle. Stand firm, but do not attack. I argue that his authority alone doesn't justify action, morality, and reason do. It's still something that is toxic because some people still really think from superficial metrics and actually write it out as something that they do today. And it's still unfair because it doesn't look at nuances. And my dad's ingrained to think that. At least I know from that argument, I obviously will not judge people just by looks. I'm going to judge someone, see if they have a real, genuine personality. Like, it's your own human. I want to hear you first before I hug you and then maybe call you cute. So leaving it like that. Now, this one is where it gets super intrapersonal. I call this one the door crisis of January 28th, 2026. So, yesterday, my dad was at home and he was in my room watching TV. I didn't sleep all day, I just came from school and he was watching TV. I really watch TV, so the issue is that my dad, when I came from school, I told him that I'm tired. But he said, why are you so mad? Why not just hug me and show me some love? Because I haven't slept all day, Dad. I need time to rest, I responded back. I don't want to perform hugging because I'm not emotionally tethered yet. I still need to charge. If I want to hug, I better make the hug real. I'm not going to force it. My dad kept watching TV, so I ended up scrolling for a little bit. Instead, I decided to take a little bit of biking, and then once I come back, I said, Dad, I need to sleep. Please leave my room. Keep in mind, this was my dad's room before, so there is shared history. I used to be upstairs, but I'm now downstairs. My dad framed it as a personal attack, and he said, fine, I know you don't want me, but he's mistaking a personal need as a personal attack. So I was like what? No, Dad, I don't hate you. I'm just tired. School takes time. Please stop watching TV in my room and let me go. After I was done showering, I said, Dad, why are you still here? I need to go sleep. Later on, when I was ready to sleep, this is where it happened. I felt confusion and hurt because I didn't have my clothes on and I was preparing to go to bed and put them on. My dad knocked on the door and said, open the door, please. I said, no, Dad, I don't have my clothes on. He said, I have a question to ask. I said, ask right here, Dad. He said, no, just open the door. I said, I have my clothes off. Hold on a minute. He kept insisting for me to open the door. He even made a threat saying that he's going to leave. I said, bye. But he knocked again and tried to open the door. I said, no, wait, I still have my clothes on. My dad said, I'm leaving, bye bye. And then he finally pushed forward and then he said, bye bye, I'm at the house. I said, it too. moments right after I felt like opening the door to let him in, but I knew I shouldn't. He was trying to violate a boundary of mine and I refused to let him do it. Retroactively, I'm glad I didn't open it. It's unfair because in basic humanity, just trying to protect your own boundaries, just because my dad saw me as a baby or maybe when I was unclothed before, it doesn't mean he can just barge in now and see me unclothed. He took care of me when he was younger because I literally could not myself. Now he doesn't have to anymore, so I'm not gonna let him in because I am still a person. I don't want you seeing me unclothed. My father's persistence wasn't based on reason or morality, since it was based on I'm your father, therefore my need overrides your boundary. I use moral disobedience in this manner by not opening the door, standing still, and ready to confront if he breaks the door open, because authority exists to protect the life of the people, not step over it. He keeps calling me son, and I don't like being called son. It feels hierarchical. I don't really feel it anyway. I also resisted because, well, in the parliament of future souls that I've always talked about before, a part of me that thinks that, what if I was a daughter who was still put on her clothes for the night? Imagine me as a teen girl. If society saw this video right now, they would below twice as much criticism, because, so then, in this case, I'll act as a societal force. But in the impact of its criticism, I'll use it in principle, and instead use it to question my parents' unexamined authority, my dad's this time. And I'm not a girl, obviously, but there's obviously a girl side of me that does act like daughter-like. It's not a soft side, but more of like a girl perspective of me. Think of an opposite version. So the part of me that is kind of like a daughter side, she'd be happy I stood up for me, and in the final accounting, I am very glad that I did. And today, my dad bought the family chicken, but he didn't really ask anyone if they wanted chicken. So instead, I went to McDonald's and I got a customized meal that fits my diet. I drink diet soda. It was lonely eating alone, though. At least I know consciously I am making the decision under no malice. So I'm glad I stood up for myself.